everybody, and welcome back to the Ultimate Fashion History's 20th Century Style Icon series. This little episode is more of a style eulogy. I seem to be doing a lot of those this year, don't I, in 2017, because we have just learnt of the passing of Hugh Hefner. I never really gave Hugh Hefner much thought, good or bad, until earlier this year when I watched the Amazon original series American Playboy, the Hugh Hefner story. It's absolutely excellent. I'd never seen a television treatment quite like this. It was part docudrama, part talking head documentary, part straight documentary. It was really well done. And as I watched it, I thought, my goodness, I had no idea just how much I had in common with Hugh Hefner. I guess I'd always sort of imagined that Hugh Hefner was the entrepreneur behind Playboy and that everybody else did all the work. Nothing could be further from the truth. That very first iconic issue in 1953 was all Hef. He did all the copy. He drew the cartoons. He did the layout, all of it on his kitchen table with $500 he'd borrowed from his mum. This hands-on approach really defined Hugh Hefner's career. There was not a word of copy, not a photograph, not a layout that wouldn't be approved by Hef before it went to print. And if he didn't like something, it would have to be changed. If he didn't think a font looked right, it would have to be changed. If a layout didn't please his eye, it would have to be changed. The difference between good and excellent is detail. That was Hugh Hefner's quote, and this attention to detail is what made Playboy so excellent. Now, whether you believe that there should be magazines with naked ladies in them at all, or you don't, you cannot deny that Playboy was an excellent publication. The artwork was always wonderful and fun and clever and absolutely of its moment, whatever that moment was. But of course, the old joke that guys would say was, Playboy, I read it for the articles. And it really was all about the articles, which were excellent. He had a team of excellent writers who really pushed boundaries. To give you an example of just how great Playboy was in terms of its editorials, the very last interview that Dr. Martin Luther King ever gave before he was assassinated was in Playboy. Playboy spoke openly and honestly about the war in Vietnam. It was behind the civil rights movement. It was anti the war in Vietnam. And believe it or not, in the 70s, Playboy was behind the women's liberation movement. Something a little bit naive about Hugh Hefner in some ways, and I don't think he saw any conflict between naked ladies and the women's liberation movement. And with that in mind, he never ever thought he was exploiting women. He believed he was celebrating women. He celebrated sex. He didn't think that sex should be this hidden, taboo, dirty thing that you never talk about. He was really into the Kinsey Report and Johnson & Johnson and all of that. And he really felt that sex should be open, it should be celebrated, it should be a fun thing between consenting adults. And this was really groundbreaking thinking back in the 1950s. And when it came to the ladies, he always wanted them to look beautiful and classy and more cheeky and coquettish than out and out sexy or raunchy. He wasn't into exploiting women, even though there's an argument that Playboy by its very definition did. In his heart, he did not want to. And proof of this is the story about Vanessa Williams. When the new Miss America was crowned and those photographs appeared of her in compromising positions, the owner of the photographs went to Playboy first and said, "Hey, look what I've got. What will you give me for them?" He had the guy thrown out of his office, and he said, "I'm not here to ruin anyone's life." And I think that sort of speaks to his sense of integrity, even though so often it was misplaced. He really wasn't out to hurt or exploit anyone. That's my opinion anyway. What he wanted to do was elevate men. Playboy really wasn't about women. It wasn't for women. It was about men. And Hugh Hefner wanted to elevate himself, and he did so through his magazine. Look at this cover. Look at some of these features. A provocative interview with Bertrand Russell, a new short story by Graham Greene. This was smart stuff. And of course, all of this exploded into the Playboy Bunny Clubs. This was revolutionary. This was new. He really created a lifestyle brand before that phrase was ever heard. And who was this lifestyle aimed at? It was aimed at an imaginary reader that Hef invented. This suave, urbane, educated, cultured, well-dressed gentleman, this man about town. What else did he do that was new and revolutionary? Well, what about the Playboy Penthouse, his late-night TV show, which was part entertainment but also part reality TV show, part talk show? He was doing reality TV before anybody else, in a way. And in terms of his integrity, he had African-American artists and guests mingle with white artists and guests. All of his backers told him not to do this because he would get no sponsors and no airtime in the South. Hef did not care. He was true to himself. He was appalled by segregation and really didn't understand it, which is why Playboy put so much of its weight behind the civil rights movement. And I think that alone kind of speaks to the man himself. Being true to himself was always more important than making money, even though he made a lot. But this is 20th century style icons, right? How did Hugh Hefner personally become a style icon? Well, he certainly didn't start out as one. Take a look at him here, proudly holding that first issue of Playboy. What I found so fascinating is that he had a personal epiphany at the beginning of the Playboy career. He realized that he was not the man that he was writing for. He wasn't well-dressed, he wasn't urbane, he wasn't as cultured and informed and educated and suave as this imaginary reader he was catering to. And so he became that person. He learned about clothes, he learned how to get a suit tailored, and then he'd tell his readers. He learned how to do his hair, how to get the right kind of haircut, the right kind of shave, and then he'd tell his readers. He learned how to tie a bow tie correctly, and then he'd tell his readers. And so Playboy actually informed a whole generation of men how to dress, as well as teaching them about wine, teaching them how to cook, teaching them how to select the right kind of jewelry for their wives or girlfriends. Playboy was a lifestyle guide for the man about town. It wasn't just about pretty naked ladies in a centerfold, and by the way, it was Hugh Hefner who coined the term centerfold, a term that has now become the byword for any sexy lady. Ooh, she's a real centerfold. This was pure Hef. And of course, no discussion on Hugh Hefner's personal style would be complete without discussing the pajamas, his lovely silk pajamas. Now, I always thought that Hef affected the wearing of pajamas round the clock to suggest that he was always ready to slip into the boudoir with one of his Playboy bunnies, which of course he was. But in fact, the reason he wore pajamas all the time was because he was a workaholic. He would work throughout the night at the Playboy office and would wear pajamas, and then night would turn into day and he kept his pajamas on, and he found it quite comfortable working in pajamas. So the pajama thing was really more about being a workaholic and working throughout the night, especially in the 60s when he was taking loads of amphetamines, than it was about sex. But this was an affectation that he certainly made his trademark until the very end. And FYI, I'm also a workaholic who often works around the clock, and guess what? I wear my night clothes in the daytime as well if I'm pulling an all-nighter on a UFH. Hugh Hefner, as a style icon, was a man who invented himself. Handsome, suave, urbane, successful, and beautifully dressed. The question remains, did Hugh Hefner exploit women? Well, he didn't think he did. And remember, he came from a very different time. No Playboy centerfold or bunny was ever forced to do anything. That wasn't Hugh's style. He was all about freedom. Freedom to do whatever you liked. And he certainly did. Did he act foolishly in his later years? Well, yeah, but there's no fool like an old fool. And one thing you can say about Hef, he lived the dream. Life's too short to be living somebody else's dream is a quote from Hugh that I love. And you may not agree with my little soft spot for Hef, but I've always been interested in weird, nocturnal, workaholic perfectionists, but perhaps it takes one to know one. R.I.P. Hugh Hefner, American Playboy. I hope you've enjoyed this episode on the Ultimate Fashion History. You can contact me through my website, amandahalley.com. Like us on Facebook, as they say. Better yet, join our Facebook group. We always have loads of fun over there. Stay up to date with new episodes. Simply click the little bell under the channel art, then click Send me notifications, because I'm back every week with new episodes, but first you have to click that little circle to subscribe. And as always, thanks ever so much for watching. Bye for now.